This is OverDrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog on TSN 1050.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again, because a vision softly creeping left its seeds while I was sleeping. And the vision.
All right, a lot of people were wondering if we were going to continue this tradition of playing this song. It's mandatory. It has to happen. It will stop when they win the Stanley Cup. When the Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup, you'll have a very different introduction.
Okay, so
very unfortunate we have to play it, but
I'm
we have to play
disappointed
it.
in the song. I'm disappointed in the song because I want this to be a friendly space for all the players to play in.
Okay,
and I
you're
don't
right.
want you to be too critical.
I don't want to place too much pressure on the guys.
Well, that's fair.
I wouldn't want to do that.
But I would say, if they made it to the next round and lost, I don't think it's a sounds of
You're
silence.
probably right.
There's probably something
You're probably
different
right.
in there. So this is the bar. This is the bar where this song gets played.
Yes, I think that's acceptable.
And
I
the
think,
way you lose sometimes, too. Because if they lost in double overtime the other night, maybe it's a little different. I don't know.
Here's one of the things I've been thinking of the last couple of days, because I'm sure the two of you are like me. My mind has been racing.
My mind has been racing, Hayes, because I thought to myself, how many different ways can we actually do this show? This is a lot of years in a row doing the exact same show.
Yes, it is in many ways, and that's why the music, I think, represents, what you're preparing for here. Now, there's different elements to it. There's different discussions about the future. Like, It does feel like it's possibly a little bit different being in the building. We'll discuss that and how that felt by the third period compared to maybe previous years. But naturally, and I think we're all guilty of this, like once they lost, it launches into big picture stuff. What happens with Marner? What happens with Tavares? What happens with Shanahan? And you take a step back and you start looking at the numbers, and there's more sample size, right? You're more focused on their 0-7 in winner-take-all games. In the weirdest way, and again, I understand why it happens, they actually didn't get criticized enough for how awful the game was, because it launched into July 1st chatter. It launched into what about the fans and what about the jerseys on the ice? As bad as Game 5 was, and it was awful, Game 7 was
worse,
way worse. They got destroyed. Like, watching the first 6 or 7 minutes, I'm like, I can't believe these are two teams in the same league.
Shot attempts for
21-0, 6 minutes in.
That's what's mind-boggling is that was another opportunity where you would think to plant the seed to the opposition to say, the dream's up, boys. We had a good run. We've been to the finals 2 years in a row. We're into the second round of year 3 of this run. Maybe we just have nothing, and maybe they stole the momentum back, and they're going to crush us tonight. Instead, they're the team that absolutely smoked the opposition. The team that, and for the captain after the game to come out and said, we had too many passengers. And the first comment he made, to your point, they were way hungrier than us. That post-game comment, they were way hungrier than us. I found that to be bizarro world.
Yeah, it's the worst indictment you could possibly have on
yourself. And then to say we had too many passengers when you laid in egg years, he was terrible. They were all terrible.
Matthews there wasn't one good player.
No,
there really wasn't.
You can't go, well, that guy had a good night or whatever. And really, if Max Domi and
Steven Lorentz
and them are your
and they had okay nights, but
fine.
What are you expecting if those are your guys?
Exactly. You're not, Florida said, hey, we'll give those guys breakaways. It wasn't Nylander, it wasn't Tavares, it wasn't Matthews, it wasn't Marner that got those breakaways. It was, early on, once after that first 10 minutes, they got a couple looks. Bob made a couple great saves.
They did.
Actually give them that.
They settled in the second half of that period.
And then the second period, you would think, okay, we're in the game. Like I thought, okay, they got through the first. I don't know how you felt, but they got through that first period, and I thought, okay, now they can win this game because they're going to come out and go, we're not getting, like,
everyone
we weathered
thought the
a storm.
same thing.
We weathered, and in the second period, it was worse.
It was exponentially worse, and in reality, the second Seth Jones scored, they may as well have taken their skates off and said, we can't do this. Yeah. We're not doing this, because it was 3-0 before you could even flinch.
It felt like the one goal counted for 3.
Yes, that's exactly right. Like, they were kicking field goals, the Panthers. Like, that's every goal was worth 3.
And I know this is a side note, but that 100% was a goal.
Yes,
That's
the Jones goal?
Yeah,
Absolutely it
absolutely.
was.
They
Absolutely
actually
it was.
lost 7-1.
That was the league and the refs being like, it's bad enough.
And good on.
Let's just relax here.
I actually thought Paul Maurice was like, I don't want to do the Jim Hiller thing here and challenge it, and it doesn't come back, and then the Leafs maybe get a power play and get a little life. Like, they just let it go because the Leafs were beating themselves, and Florida was all over them, and it was like, that was 100% a goal.
Yeah, I agree with you. In the end, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
He had some bizarro comments too. Like, it's been a long time since I said this, but Mo, what the hell are you talking about? Talking about how the Leafs players have to pay the price, and Matthew Tkachuk coming out and saying if this team was somewhere else, it would be way better. What the hell are these guys talking about?
Well,
I actually think they're punking everyone.
I fully believe that.
For next year, and just make them believe that they're actually really good. So if we play them next year, we'll smoke their asses again. I have no idea what the hell they're talking about.
I have said that consistently with all of Brad Marchand's commentary.
They're punking them.
Is that
I will say
Marchand
you've
is
been
being
consistent.
completely disingenuous, and he's trolling them, and he owns them, and he does own them.
He does
He
own
owns them. He was phenomenal throughout the series. He's 5-0 against the Leafs in Game 7s. That's a stat that may never be broken. An individual player being 5-0 in Game 7s against another opponent.
And he wasn't a passenger in
He was great. He was great. But listen, Marchand, I will say he was composed. Like, he's a great speaker. He's a great quote.
Right.
Tkachuk, for me, is just simply trolling people. And let's consider who we're talking about here. If that's Barkov, I would say that's kind of an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Matthew Tkachuk, this is what he does. This is how he operates. We're going to trust the word of Matthew Tkachuk and Brad Marchand on this market, a market they've never played in before. And what bothers me is that naturally the market, and I guess we're falling victim to it right now, has fallen hook, line, and sinker for it as a distraction discussion in commentary, which in my mind actually proves the complete opposite of pressure. Because today down at locker cleanout, guys are being asked about that, and they can filibuster, and they can just blow V8, be like, well, yeah, it's tough. Like, hey, thanks for not asking me about how I played. Let's talk about the pressure.
Or
And the
how every
fans and
time
the
it
media.
gets to a Game 7, we lose and I don't play well.
It's the biggest cop-out on earth, and it sickens me that people are actually buying into it. Like, hey, Matthew Tkachuk made a great point. That's why the Leafs lose all the time in these big games. It's ridiculous. It's disingenuous.
Well,
it's insulting. And I wish that one of the Leafs stepped up today and said, can those guys shut up? They're not from here. They don't represent us. I don't want to hear it. I love it here, and we're going to win here.
Well,
that's what I wanted to hear one of these guys say. Most notably the captain, but that's not in his DNA. That's not how Matthews operates. He wants to get his media done, not say much, and leave. And that's the way he works.
I don't know what I heard today. What was more, I don't know if concerning is the word or just disappointing or whatever. Like, William Nylander's like, yeah, it's one game. Like, it's not one game.
Willie's
It's not-
taken the I'm too cool, calm, and collective over the cliff too far now.
It-
And if
Like, it's
everybody
gone
wants
too
to-
far.
Yeah,
So,
if
like,
anybody wants to think, because the philosophy on this guy and the thought process on this guy was, he performs in the playoffs. He's not a part of the issues why they don't win. Yeah, he is.
he was horrendous.
Horrendous.
On game 5 and game 7, Willie was as bad as he can
Yeah.
play. His effort in game 7 was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy bad. Now, he's not alone. Like, again, this isn't about just Willie.
No.
But you're right. He gets credit. And in many ways, I think it's accurate, and it works for him. And a lot of times is, nothing gets to him. He's cool. He's calm. He loves it. You can't have an answer like that. Nah,
Just
crappy game. Nothing. Like, come
disappointing
on, guys.
in the sense, like, at some
You
point-
lost again in game 7. Come on.
I think people, you disarm people with the truth. Like, somebody could have just said, I needed to be better. I'm not going to talk about my teammates. I'm going to look at myself and say, I needed to be better, and I will be. I'm going to have a great summer and work out hard and be back.
That whole exercise of having, once they talk after the last game, there's no sense of having the guys come in and talk again. It's a nonsense thing. They're not going to say anything different. I have no idea.
You know what?
Like, there was some nonsense questions today. Instead of saying to the coach, well, how did you think Austin Matthews played in Game 7? Somebody asked, how did you like coaching him? And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah, it
what
doesn't
are
really
you
matter.
talking like,
Exactly. And that's again the whole pressure thing. No one's
Dude, that
getting grilled
pressure
down
thing-
there.
Let
And the
me just-
Leafs,
let me just
the
tell
Leafs
you this.
shelter these guys.
Let me just tell you the thing about the pressure and playing in this market. And it's kind of harsh to say, but when you're a professional athlete, you don't think much of the media, okay? Coming in the locker,
Totally.
Not to the extent of like if you came in and I was playing, I'd be like, "Here's this loser again. He's going to bug me and ask me questions."
Yes. Exactly. It's not.
I would say that. I literally remember saying that.
Go.
Like a lot of members of the media are my friends now. But I'll be like, "Here come these losers to bother me, and I got to answer these questions." So if that's the case, why would what they say or what they write, why would that affect anybody?
Oh, I don't think it.
It's just, what are we talking? The media, you just think that they're people that come in and bother you. So why would anything that they do create more pressure, or it's a difficult place I just don't know what people are talking about.
The only thing I thought of when I heard that, and obviously we've had a couple days to decompress or at least think about it. We see it in New York. We see it in Philadelphia. We see it in, big cities.
Boston, LA.
This is a big city. What's happened here, the interpretation is there's that line. It's like, well, that happens in America. This is Canada, and that doesn't. This is a big city. There's 6 million people in this area, or around. Like it's loud. It's noisy. It's a passionate fan base. They're allowed to do that, and we'll call it the bad, there's a lot of good that comes with it too. Like nobody's talking about how, Mitch Marner had that comment, well, you get treated like gods. Yes, you do get treated very well. But the way I looked at it is, this is a big market, and do you think if the New York Rangers had that effort, they wouldn't get booed off the ice?
Well, of course, exactly. Exactly.
That's where I don't think it's just reserved for, well, in Toronto. There's big markets everywhere. And there's passionate fan bases everywhere.
Yes. And are there crazy people that will do crazy things?
Of course.
Yes. But there is probably 1,000,000-fold more the opposite way.
Yes.
That will faint when they meet you. Literally faint or tear up when they meet you and see you. And, that's the ebbs and flows of a big city, a big market, and a lot of history. And yes, there's a lot of volume. There's a lot of coverage. Of course, I get it. It is different. And there is no bigger disparity from the top market to the lowest market than in the NHL. Yeah. Like if you look at the Dallas Cowboys compared to the Jacksonville Jaguars, it's not as big of a gap in terms of coverage and craziness and popularity as it is with the Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers. It's just not. Like that's just the way it goes. Yeah. There's a huge disparity in the sport where the biggest markets, and the 7 Canadian ones would be at the top of that list.
Forefront, yeah.
But there's certainly 4 or 5, 6, 7 American markets that are huge and love their hockey and have a long history and a lot of coverage. There's a big disparity between them and the teams at the bottom 7 or 8 teams that just don't have tons of fans, tons of media coverage, tons of history.
Right.
So there is a big disparity, and obviously the Leafs are at the top of that list. But, I actually, listening to the media today, who I thought looked and sounded very comfortable?
Who?
Mitch Marner. I actually thought his media was very comfortable. And I don't know what to make of that, because there is this conclusion that has immediately taken off that he's gone. And that may be the case.
Right.
It may be the case that he's made up his mind he wants to leave, or he feels he has to leave. And maybe there's a scenario where the Leafs look at it and say, we need change too. And we'll get to all these conversations.
Yeah.
But I'm not nearly as convinced as I was maybe a day or two ago that it's a foregone conclusion he's out of here.
Really?
I'm not.
What are you talking about? Like, honestly, what are you talking about?
How many years have we said Mitch Marner's got to go, or Tavares has got to go? And it's not my opinion on if he should stay. I've made it very clear. I think they need to move, and I think he needs to move.
Honestly, there's no way in hell. I'll quit. I'm not doing it.
Get the papers ready.
You cannot bring that team back as it is. Not even close. I would honestly explore everything. All of them together, they are too similar. We talked about this before we started the show.
Talked about it for years.
Yeah, they're just not winners. They don't have that killer instinct, and they can't elevate their play at the right times to get the job done. Brian Whitney brought up an outrageous stat the other day, saying like, since 2004 or 5 or something, the Buffalo Sabres have won 4 playoff series. The Maple Leafs have won 2.
Yes.
The Buffalo Sabres have missed the playoffs for 14 straight years.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah.
That is crazy stuff, man. You cannot bring that group of players back.
Listen.
I don't care if they have some kind of meeting of the minds and they're like, I was just kidding about going to free. You can't do it. You cannot do it, man. There's no way.
Play the tape from last year, the year before, and the year before that. We've been saying it for years. What makes you think the Leafs have the stomach all of a sudden?
Dude, when you go to a player, I just know from my own experience, when I caught wind that I was going to be traded or that the whispers were out there, people talking to me in warm-up, I was like, get me the hell out of here. Mm-hmm. When you approach a player to say, we want you to waive your no-movement clause more than once, that fractures the relationship. I don't know how you're going to come back from that.
That's
from the player perspective. Like, you don't think Mitch remembers that, and that's why he's been so pissy about this stuff?
Of course. But my understanding is the reason they were like, this is our last option was because they were trying to give him a contract forever.
Right.
They were trying to sign him. And he's like, no, not signing. And
okay, so then from the team perspective, you're like, there's no way in hell we're going back to the well on July 1.
I'm just saying I'll believe it when I see it with these guys. That's what I'm saying. It's not my opinion on what I think should happen. These are two different conversations. I'll give you my opinion on what I think will happen what should happen. We can all do a roundtable on that. What I'm saying is the Leafs, year after year after year, have proven do not conclude anything until they actually show you they have the stomach to do it.
Believe it when you see it.
Believe it when you see it. Because here's another thing from Marner's perspective. Again, I was impressed with his media, whatever that's worth. I don't know what it's worth.
What were you impressed about? What did he say?
I actually thought he spoke glowingly about his experience, about the city. I think he shot down a lot of the stuff that people were trying to poke at him, like, what about this and what about that and how tough it is on your family. And he basically said, no, like he didn't get into any of that.
Exactly.
Which I have an appreciation
he didn't play the
for.
victim.
He didn't, exactly. What Mitch Marner does very well, and what his camp has done very well, his agent has done very well, is they negotiate as well as anybody in the world. They negotiate. And Mitch, there's a chance that he's negotiating. Let's not forget, 6 years ago, his camp had everyone believe we're signing an offer sheet July 1. You don't give him what he wants, we're out of here. Yeah. Offer sheet season coming. Yeah. And that was bogus.
Going to play in Switzerland.
We'll go to play in Switzerland if we have to. Yeah. Like, I think there's a chance. I'm not predicting it's a lock, but there's a chance this is all calculated, and it's more about poking and prodding the Leafs and say, you don't have the stomach to let me walk. You don't have the stomach to fill my 100 points.
I didn't expect this out of you today.
Well,
I've learned my lesson with the team. They don't have the stomach because John Tavares walked out of press today and said, "Oh yeah, I'm coming back." Well, I just talked to Berube and Tree, and I feel very good about coming back. 2 days later, it's already announced from John. Yeah, I'll be back next year. So where's the evaluation process?
Well, there is. Let's go back a second here. You're talking Mitch Marner. Mitch Marner's best opportunity to maximize a contract is an 8-year deal. So maybe it's sign and trade. Maybe it's something like that because he's only going to get 7 years from somebody else, and it'll be a boatload of money. I don't disagree.
Regardless how you feel about how he played,
he's going to get paid a ton of money.
I don't think for a guy that's got that much money in the bank, I don't think that extra year. I don't know if they think about that.
I would agree with you on normal circumstances, but when you look at it, this could be his last contract. You look at where his age, like if he gets 8 years, like it's a big number, massive number. An extra year, you tag on another 13 or 14 onto that, like that's a big number.
Huge money.
It's going to be a big number regardless. But I do believe that everything's on the table from the Marner camp and from the Toronto Maple Leafs. The thing is, though, I would step back and say, is Brad Treliving going to have autonomy to make all these decisions?
Well, because Shanahan will make that call.
That's where I'm going. There's decisions to be made not only with the roster construction, but who's making them. And I don't think, you've got Keith Pelley that's taken over. You got, I believe, Ed Roger. Like there's people above him and below him that have to be sorted out before you start to sort out the pecking order of everything. That's where I think the next step is going to come. Is not, hey, who's gone and who's not in the next 2 days. It's like who's making the call and who's going to run the organization moving forward. I don't think Brad Treliving's going anywhere. I don't believe Craig Berube is. I think those guys are new enough and have a vision and understand. But it's more about who's driving the bus above them.
Yeah, well, and the Shanahan, listen, Brendan Shanahan, this is his vision. Like the core four and being committed to these guys and believing at some point they would get beyond this round has been his doing.
Yes.
Like he has made the ultimate calls on all
Well,
that.
he is. He's the same guy that came out last year and said we're seeing some tendencies year after year, and guess what those are? I would imagine it's the performances of the guys in critical games, and yet you saw it again.
Yes.
So I'm sure anyone that believed in this said that's enough of this. That is enough of this.
Well, and it's possible that's what maybe keeps him here. Is an understanding like if you're going to stay as the president, these guys have to go.
Right.
But again, I'm more skeptical of the beast of MLSE and the money making and all that. That is, again, we are hyper focused on a very, very specific goal here, which is that next step into actually winning the thing.
Right.
Because, like, again, they won the division. They're into the second round. They lost in Game 7 of the second round. There's 20 teams in the league that would love that.
But that's where you're saying is the vision from a business standpoint, successful season again.
Unfortunately,
Right?
it might be.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. So the fans can yell and scream. I can yell and scream. We can all yell and scream and say, well, shouldn't you be more 100% hyper-focused on winning the Stanley Cup?
Right.
That's an idealistic viewpoint. That's a fantasy because that's not what these guys are doing. What they're doing is they're making money. Now, you can sit there and say you'll make the most money
Right.
if you win, and absolutely that's accurate. That's always been the case. But, they make the playoffs every single year. How many home games did they get this year? 7? It's a lot of money, man.
Huge.
A lot of money they just made.
Maple Leaf Square.
And that's like no one's going to say that. They just made a fortune the last month.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
You're looking at it from not an emotional standpoint, the business standpoint.
I'm saying what I think there's a chance the way they look at it. Could be wrong. Again, I hope I'm wrong. I hope the focus is something's got to change here, and I do think there's an element of the business that does have to be considered from that standpoint.
Well, there's another
because
part
of
of the
how
business.
crazy the fans were the other night and how crazy people are, and they want a fresh start. Right. And I think that's kind of mandatory at some point.
And other people have brought up, you want to talk about businesses, like, yes, this sucks, but people have chimed in who have said, well, you can break this up and you can possibly be Buffalo or Detroit in the near. Like there's Buffalo and Detroit out there that haven't sniffed it for a long time. There's that out there.
Well,
so how pissed off can you really be? But if that's your point, like, what are you even in this for?
Well, I agree with you. And
you know what I mean?
What I guess I'm getting to is I hope someone down there, whether it's Pelly, whether it's Edward Rogers, maybe it's Shanahan if he's still here, you got to have the stomach to try to live in a world without these guys, like do something different here. And what also needs to be remembered, because you do see this reaction, like, well, you can't replace Marner. Yes, you're not going to replace him. But you're also not trying to. The reason for change is because you're not trying to replace.
You're looking for
him.
a different result.
You're looking for something different. You're looking for and also, if let's say Marner walks for nothing, Tavares walks for nothing. That just happens. This team's still going to the playoffs.
You have cap space.
Both goalies, all your defensemen are signed, and Matthews, Nylander, and Nyes are still here. Like, this isn't scorched earth. If Mitch Marner and Tavares leave, they're not Buffalo.
No.
Like, that's not the way this is. No one's suggesting scorched earth, reload, 5-year plan. That's not happening.
And I said it the other day, you can walk away from some players, but you better get some damn good ones in here, because Mitch Marner and John Tavares are big reasons why they get to the playoffs every year.
Yep.
They're also big reasons why they don't win that big game.
That's the conundrum.
I don't know what it is. Them together, it doesn't work. And anybody that would want to bring them all back together, that would be honestly the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard of in my entire life.
I agree, but I would have said that 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I mean,
you need different personalities in there. That's it. I'm sorry.
Yes, you do.
I think you can do it with 2 of the 4. 4 of the 4 right now.
You mean you can win with 2 of the 4?
I think you can have success or relatively the same results or more with 2 of the 4. And 2 of them are under contract.
Yeah, Matthews and Nylander are here.
Not going
They're not
anywhere.
going anywhere.
Now, would I have liked to see 88 play better? Yes. Would I have liked to see 34 play better? Yes. Would I like to see a healthy Nyes? He was obviously banged up.
Yeah, by Game 7 he was.
He couldn't contribute the way he had been contributing. You're going to use that money if they decide. Now, keep in mind, Mitch Marner and John Tavares control a lot of the narrative here, too. If they decide to leave, you use that money to spend it wisely, to round out your team in a different way. And it might end up being better just because addition by a subtraction. I look at, and we were talking about this off air, Barkov and Reinhart. They're not killers. They're great players, superstars in my opinion, but they play a different way than Bennett does, than Marchand does, than
Kachuk.
And so it doesn't mean that Matthews and Marner, they could play, or
They're
Matthews and
insulated
Nylander
properly.
could play a different way, but you have to have other guys play a different way.
Yeah.
What is evident for me is 4 players kind of play the same way. And that trickles down, and it's a lot tougher to insulate them, use
Absolutely.
that word.
But you got to have the stomach to try it. That's at the core of all
How could
this.
you not? That's what I don't understand. I understand your comment, but how could you not have the stomach? How could you have the stomach to take the chance of that happening yet again?
I don't have an answer for you other than that's the easy way out. The easy way out is you do everything. You just give Marner 14, whatever he wants, Tavares, and you bring him back, and they finish with 105 points, and then they play maybe Detroit in the first round and win that, and then probably lose in the second round, and you say, well, next year we learned, and now Berube's been here for That's the easy way. It's an easy way, but they've been doing that for years. When I think they knew the answer to all of this can't be surprising to a guy like Brendan Shanahan, who's a hockey savant and hockey lifer, that these guys don't have what it
They're
takes
not far
collectively.
away. If this team stayed together, where somebody would say they're getting on the other side of
Yeah,
the
they're an older team.
Yeah, they're
an
getting
old
on the
vet
other
team.
side. We got to freshen it up with some young guys.
Well,
They
yes.
haven't even got past the second
John
round but
Tavares
once.
is on the other side.
Yeah, so be 35 in September.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Okay, because that is an important point of this, too, is that when the dust settles, these guys are leaving and everyone's looking at free agency. What's very clear is they have to start drafting and developing and bringing players into this team.
Right.
Like to my knowledge, all you got is Easton Cowan that might be available next year. Like, who else is out there? Like you look at Game 7, it was the core 4, Nyes, Riley, and Woll. Those are the guys who have been drafted and brought into the system. Everyone else, free agency, trades. So if Marner and Tavares are going to leave and others are going to leave, you better find some youth. You got to have some kids that are coming, and I don't get the impression that they're there right now. All right, more on this throughout the afternoon. MJ coming up, CJ coming up, Confirm or Deny coming up, Mark Giordano coming up. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 2.
Back to Overdrive with Hayes, Noodles, and the O-Dog.
All right, Overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. I want to point out we're up on YouTube Live on the TSN YouTube channel. So you can find us on TSN 2. You can find us on TSN Radio, streaming, iHeartRadio app, tsn.ca, home smart speaker, YouTube Live. We're everywhere, man. You can't avoid us.
Yeah.
We are around, and you better believe it.
So when we meet people abroad, are we allowed to say we're YouTube sensations?
Yes, I think we can say that.
Really?
I think we've officially reached that point where we can mention that we are YouTube content creators.
Yeah.
Love it.
Or what do those
TSN.
people say it like they are? They're
Like content creators.
Yeah.
That's just like a broad version of
Yeah, I mean,
I
there's all
post
these
stuff.
like
and-
weird ones, like I don't know, like some of the younger ones that stream from the bar and all
Oh, yeah.
that. Like they're
and they're making massive
Yes.
money.
Bang.
Like some of the streamer stuff, like these people are like massively popular. Like millions
Yes.
and millions of people are just
72
watching them play a
million
video
followers.
game.
My son.
Yeah.
My
It's like,
son
oh, this
watches
guy's
a
playing
guy
a video
play-
game tonight. I'm going to check that out.
Yeah, my son watches a guy play Minecraft,
Yeah.
and the guy narrates.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like, "What are you
incredible.
doing?" He goes, "Oh, this guy's great."
Oh, he's the best. No one plays video
playing a
games
video
like
game.
that guy.
Yeah.
Okay, so what did we establish in the first segment? That you're going to quit if Marner and Tavares are back? Both of them? Is that established,
Look,
or where do we
I
stand
just
on
got to
this?
say this. They are fantastic players.
Yes.
Okay. But I'm so tired of you get 100 points, you get 70 goals or 69 goals, 45 goals for Willie. John Tavares scored 38. But I'm just tired of seeing that and the way they perform in these big games. It's like you have to move away from that. And like I
That's
said,
very reasonable.
well,
yeah, like I don't
Very
know
reasonable.
what person would ever look at that and say, yeah, we got to bring. You don't have to bring anybody back. You got to get some different players in there.
Well,
I don't care who they are, but they better be good. They have to be good. And it's just got to be a different look. All of their personalities, like we talked about this, they're too similar. It's like, I don't know. Like you look at that guy, and I go to McDavid out in Edmonton. He's the most skilled player in the world, but he seems like he's a stone cold killer when it comes down to the brass taxes. Like he's got a look in his eye where he understands that he had to get to a different emotional level to do this stuff. These guys don't have that. They don't have it. They're not winners, man. I'm sorry. Like, that's just the plain truth of it.
And a couple of them are going to stay, and they have to prove that they can't be winners.
They have to learn to do that or
that's
push
the truth.
through. Yeah. But here's the other thing, too. The one maybe X factor in all of this that will and should and could weigh in is Craig Berube. This is his first full year behind the curtain and seeing what this group is like. Now, you were in the building the other night. His head looked like he was going to pop off when he was.
You know how insane that was, Jamie? Do you know how insane that was? In a Game 7, a lot of coaches would say, I don't even speak at a Game 7 because I trust my players, and I sat back. I've heard coaches say this in different sports. This was a game where you don't even have to address the team. And there he was in the second period, losing his mind on his players to wake up and get skating. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
The fact that happened is so crazy, it's not even funny.
And we haven't really seen that from him.
A Game 7 where it's like your nuts are on the line and your coach loses it to wake up?
He didn't yell in Game 5 because that was the outlier. I don't know what the odds were to lose 6-1 after the last home game you'd lost 6-1. Like, the odds would have been
that parlay would have paid millions.
Because Game 5, Chief came out the next day and was extremely composed and said, it's a tape burner, which we all would have agreed. It's just bad night. That's where Willie goes, bad night, not worried
And they
about
redeemed
it.
themselves in Game 6.
Game 6, fantastic, played tight, blocking shots, doing everything, didn't give up any chances. I thought both goals on Bob were bad goals. It was really a tight game. But in the end, Game 7, I would have bet money that's an overtime game, that's a 1-goal game, maybe a 2-goal game with an empty netter or something. It was going to be a highly contested chess match. It wasn't.
Yeah, because the Leafs... Now, listen, credit to the Panthers because they were unbelievable, and they deserve a lot of credit. But the Leafs, they couldn't match it. They weren't even close to matching it. And you're right that Berube has now seen behind the curtain. Now, I think you got to take what he said today with a grain of salt. He was asked, do you want Marner and Tavares back? And he said 100%. He has to say that because they're his players and it's not his decision.
Right.
It's on Tree Living, it's on Shanahan, and the players are going to make the call. And if they decide that they're bringing them back, you can't have the coach saying, I don't want them here. Like, you have to play that card.
Yeah.
So he has to say it. I think it's meaningless. I don't think it has any bearing on what the Leafs brass is going to be thinking or what the players are going to do. But this is also 9 years in to this era, this Matthews, Marner, Nylander era. Whatever they decide to do, it can't be labeled impatient because I've noticed that discussion coming up. Wow, this will be like what they've done with players in the past where you moved off them too quickly and they go somewhere else and they have success. Exactly. It's 9 years. Whatever happens, it's not based on impatience. It's not because they made some snap judgment. This isn't trading Randy Carlyle when he's too young and hasn't developed.
Joe Thornton
Exactly. This isn't like not allowing players to grow. And this idea that, well, look what Kadri did when he left, or look what Hyman's been doing, or Kessel, or Bozak. The difference is, like with Kessel, the team stunk. Like Phil, there's nothing Phil could do here to prove who he was. They never made the playoffs.
Phil was a 1 here. He went and played as a 3.
And that's what's important, is all these other guys, including Kadri, who we all love, that was McKinnon, Rantanen, Makar's team. Nas was 4th at best. Actually, Landeskog was still playing. He was 5th. He was the 5th guy. So if Marner leaves and is the 5th guy somewhere and wins, that doesn't prove anything. This market and the reaction to it all, it will be proven that maybe something's strange here or they made a misjudgment. If Marner goes somewhere else and is the man and wins a Conn Smythe and a cup, then everyone will say, what happened? I don't understand this. That's different because here he's the man. Here it's you and Matthews. You're the 2 best players. You're the guys. You're the leaders. You get paid the most, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, if he goes somewhere and does it as the man, then you can circle back on the comment of this market and everyone's
Absolutely. But if you go somewhere and you're the 4th or 5th guy and you're on the second line and you blend in, that doesn't count, man. That's not an indictment on Toronto's decision-making.
No, and keep in mind, he has the right to go somewhere else. If he goes and is the man, what Toronto did is they committed to the 2 other men.
Which they already have. Matthews and Nylander are here. They're not going
anywhere.
Nylander,
And if Mitch Marner wants to stay and they work it out, it would be the three of them. John Tavares, like you say, I don't believe it all. I do believe sometimes it works out for both, situations. Mitch Marner might go, and the grass might be greener for him personally with another organization.
Yes, 9 years is a long time.
And you know what? I thought about it. He might go and have success, but he also might come back later in his career and play a year or two with the Leafs later on down the road. Who knows? Like, you never know what's going on. But the biggest thing right now is the decisions have to be made. Is this group good enough to try and win a Stanley Cup next year? And how is Brad Treliving going to roster construct this team?
Well, and that's the question. And listen, we got a month and a half to figure that out in terms of who's available, what trades could be available, what they do. And like I said prior to going to the last break, they don't have the luxury of a farm system that is like
guys pushing
flush with talent.
Right.
Like that is something that doesn't get brought up enough. And I understand they've gone all in and they've traded and all that's going to cause issues on that end.
Right.
But like they did their heavy lifting with Riley and the core three guys. That was 9 years ago, man. Like, Willie got drafted 11 years ago. And yes, you have Nyes, and yes, you have Wall, and Wall was the backup who wouldn't have been playing if Stolarz was healthy. You got to find some younger talent that comes in on the cheap, that can pop, that can push people, that can filter through. That has to happen. It's got to be a priority for them. Like, they've got to find younger talent that can step in here.
Where the hell are you going to find that, man?
Well, you got to draft it. You got to draft it ideally. But
okay, then they're 4 years away.
I get it, but why was that and the cop-out always is, well, they trade all their picks. I get it.
Or you trade somebody of value that either needs a change, or you're looking to change the age of that. And again, there's guys under cost control, under value. Like Morgan Riley controls his own destiny.
Yeah,
decide that
he may need a change of scenery.
But
he had a tough year this year.
Listen, we love Morgan. Yeah, it's a different scenario, but in the end, it all comes back to if Brad Treliving has freedom to roster construct this team, what is his vision for it? And there's going to be things where his hands are tied, where it's like, I can't control Mitch Marner coming in or not. That's up to him.
Well, you can control not signing him.
I understand
that's in the control.
He has the most control. You're not offering. It's just you're playing somewhere else.
Regardless, again, this is the fantasy couch GM. You always want to get something for the asset. So maybe if he decides he wants to move on, well, hey, I can get something for a sign and trade, like they did with
possibly.
Matthew Tkachuk.
Very rarely happens in the league, but did happen with Tkachuk. You're right. Now, he had a year left, so
you're
it was
right.
different.
I understand. Different scenarios, all of that.
And he's Tkachuk.
Yes, I understand that.
I know. I'm just going. Yeah. I'm just saying. I do think
that's a great name to bring up, because these guys are so talented. It's just got to be something different, a different element.
Well, it's a great point. Bill Zito, it's Huberdeau coming off 115 points season.
But the time to do that was 2 or 3 years ago,
and I'm
guys.
changing.
That ship has sailed.
But I don't know if the ship has sailed. It's just it's time now. It is time now, and you're right. The ship could have done that a couple years ago.
We've been saying it's time.
The
for
ship
3
has sailed.
years, man.
Here's the breakdown of the 9 years of Matthews, Marner, Nylander. There's 3 stages to this, and I think what we witnessed on Sunday night with the reaction at the end of the game, which got crazy. I was there, and it was dark in that building by the end. Like, it was dark. And, I don't condone the idiocy of throwing stuff on the ice, especially when they're playing.
During
play is just completely stupid. And yet, I get why people are so disturbed and angered. And it really it started in the second chapter of this run, because the first 3 years was just brimming with optimism and hope. And these kids had arrived, and
we're going to be good soon.
They're going to be great.
You could see a step ladder.
You could see it, and even like Babcock was there, and he had a different reputation and view at that point, and he was a winner. And Shanahan had pushed all the right buttons, and everything was just incredibly positive. And then the next 3, and the first 3 was Washington, Boston in 7, Boston in 7.
Right.
But although I was there in Game 6 against Washington when they lost. And it was standing ovations, and everyone loved them. And they're like, this is the great chants through the building. Go Leafs, go chants when they lost in Game 6 of that series.
We were in the building.
It was amazing. And then Boston in 7 and 18, Boston in 7 and 19. Like, okay, but good experience. They're going to get this. They're going to figure this out.
Lessons learned, all of that.
The second 3 years is when everything changed. That's when Babcock left. That's when Tavares arrived. Kadri left. It became about contracts. They all got paid. They all were threatening to hold out. Some of them did. And then it went Columbus, Montreal, Nick Paul, Tampa. And that was the 3 years where people said, what the hell's going on here?
Right.
Why are they getting paid like they've won cups? Why can't you hold these guys accountable? Why is it that Dubas and Keefe have to be here and it's not Lou and Babcock anymore? What happened?
Right.
And then it became like there was this mood change in that 3 years, because then you look at the last three in a vacuum, putting the history aside, which I understand you can't, and everyone has to consider it's been 60 years since a cup and all that. The last three have been second round, 69 goals by Matthews, second round. That in a 3-year nutshell, without any history, is actually there's a lot of positivity and fun. And,
you're like,
hey, this is like, okay, second round. Tavares goes to the OT winner in Game 6 in Tampa. Matthews chasing 69 or 70 was the greatest individual season I've ever witnessed. I mean, it was an unbelievable feat. And then this year you get to Game 7 of the second round. That chapter, like, you could sell that as, you know what, actually there was some – you couldn't do it anymore because of the 3 years
you can't,
before.
You're tying the six – you're tying the 6 years in.
So, like, that's the story. That's the arc and the storybook of the Matthews-Marner era.
Yeah, you guys that created some buzz with the second round, 70 goal, you're the same guys that lost to Columbus in the bubble, that totally tanked against the Montreal Canadiens.
Right.
And the Nick Paul game.
And
you're the same guys that did that.
Yep. And needed to win every single negotiation. And, you know,
I actually can't even believe that there's people that are like, just give them, like, there's people that are just carrying water for these guys online. Give them another chance. It's shocking to read that. Like, I don't know how many chances. And they keep referring to, like, the Ovi scenario, the Stevie Y scenario, where it took them a long time. I'm sorry, man. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it with these guys.
You're right. It did take those guys a long time, but we would have to go back into the history to see what changed around them. That's the difference.
Well, ironically, Shanahan was one of the changes.
But the
point, player.
You're right. The point being is that wasn't a 4 or 5 pack of guys that Washington carried right through and just kept changing the guys around him. Like, you know, yes, Backstrom was there. I think Carlson. That's pretty much it. I think Holtby kind of in and out there. But it wasn't, you know, those guys like this. The problem is those guys, there's 4 guys, center ice and right wingers in this top corner, a lot of money, and they're all kind of built the same way. And then the team's built around them. Like that's different. It's Carlson, it's Backstrom and Ovi. And then they kept switching around him. Like I could see in the future a portion of those guys winning here. Not all of them. That's the difference.
And listen, it's not their fault that they won all those negotiations. It was on the team to either not give in or conclude that something had to change. But again, you know, it's easy retrospective analysis, hindsight 2020. But I do think Kadri going, Hyman going, those two in particular, should have never happened. It just never should have happened. Yet all it was about the core four, them getting what they need. They're the guys. Everything else is irrelevant. It never should have come to a conclusion that Kadri was going to have to go for a trade that it was just horrendous, and Hyman walks for nothing. Like those are 2 guys, local guys, love being Leafs. That they brought a different ingredient.
They play differently.
They play differently, and it didn't happen that way.
The Kadri one.
Yes, I get with the suspensions, and we got to recall that because at the time he was taking heat, he deserved a lot of heat.
I know, but I remember sitting on the panel with Bob McKenzie after that game, and he said, that might be Kadri's last game if I understand what this organization is thinking, because they're just not putting up with that. And I remember thinking, how on earth? I remember saying to Bob, I'm like, you're crazy for saying that. There's just no way in hell. On a team that needs some grit and some guys that are a little bit crazy, how could that guy be possibly the one that goes out the door? And he said, you watch, he's going to go out the door. And I just said, no way. And he went out the door.
Yeah, and ultimately that again was maybe the fatal flaw or sin, is that it became about, you know, skill and composure, and they completely blocked out the idea that, you know, craziness and passion and intimidation and all that, that can work. And as a result, we stand here today. All right, Mike Johnson in 15 minutes. Confirm or deny coming up as well. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on YouTube Live. All right, Mike Johnson coming up. Confirm or deny as well. So the Leafs were speaking earlier today, Craig Berube and the players. We don't know when Brad Treliving's going to speak. We don't know if or when Brendan Shanahan will speak. If and when Keith Pelley will speak. We haven't really heard that yet, which has some people wondering, is there going to be movement? Yeah. I mean, those guys have to speak at some point. Treliving's got to speak. The GM has to talk at the end of the year.
Usually happens tomorrow, like it's the day after.
Yeah, they let the players and coach do their thing, and then the players get out of here, and then they go a day or two, and then they have the GM speak. And again, Shanahan's generally up there, and we'll see if he is or not.
I think it's Thursday.
Yeah,
that's what I would think. By Thursday, we'll have another.
Get another presser.
Well,
Struddy's favorite, the press conferences.
I think that guy been throwing jabs at you.
I haven't heard from Strud, but he's prepping for the game. Right, everyone in Edmonton's so angry about the travel from Edmonton to Dallas and how tough it is, and they got a 1:00 game on Sunday, and that's
which is a weird. You would think in the Final Four, why wouldn't you have 8:00 Eastern? Right,
I don't know either, but you're in the finals, and just relax out there.
Well,
you got through the last series in 5.
You always nitpick on things. You're right, but it just
relax.
Isn't that better for viewing pleasure?
I don't understand why it is
either.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
But Sunday at 3:00 out here, that's the game.
So what? The series goes Wednesday, Sunday?
Wednesday, Friday, Sunday
in Dallas.
Oh, okay.
Sunday, Tuesday in Edmonton, but Sunday's a 1:00 game.
1:00 local start. Yeah, it's a weird start.
Afternoon game.
It's weird.
Yeah.
All right, hour 2 coming up. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.